Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 197 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Con Whiteley. And today's episode is on why do people cyberstalk others? And it is Saturday, the 25th of March 2023, as I record this. So the reason why I actually wanted to do today's episode is because cyberstalking. It's definitely a topic we've never covered before, and to be honest, cyberpsychology is something we won't really focus on the podcast because how the internet and technology impacts our behaviour isn't something I'm too interested in personally, but cyberstalking does link into a number of other areas of psychology I really am interested in. And cyberstalking, it's also one of those words that we throw around quite a bit. For example, like tons of people say, oh yeah, like I cyberstalk that celebrity. Oh yeah, like I cyberstalk this, like this politician. I cyberstalk like my best friends. We all say those things, but we don't actually mean it in the strictest of senses. So this is also sort of about what is real cyberstalking, and that I say in air quotes. So in today's podcast episode, we talk about the different factors that are related to cyberstalking, and that gets really interesting. So definitely stay tuned for that. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're going to be reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one is, kids help others more after experiencing awe. Listening to a majestic symphony, standing beneath a towering cathedral, or visiting a beautiful painting, these are all experiences that can lead to feelings of awe. When we experience awe, we feel small and our attention shifts to the wider world rather than ourselves. And past work on adults has suggested that this fosters pro-social behaviours that benefit others, and I think we've looked at that on the podcast before. A new study has found that feelings of awe make children more pro-social too. This is perhaps unsurprising as the authors write, open quote, intrinsically curious and hungry for the mysterious, children are built for awe, close quote. And that's something I completely agree with, because children, they are absolutely brilliant in the sense that they do want to explore, they want to experience like new things, and they really are built for art because like they really do appreciate it, because of course at their age, because they're so small, everything is big, amazing, and really fun, especially if the adults make it fun. For example, that's why if you make a really boring activity fun, then kids are going to enjoy it because they really do pick up on that fun aspect. And if we want our kids and our young people to be more pro-social, yes, and hopefully like this pro-social behaviour will actually stay into adulthood, then making sure that everyone can experience art is really important, which is why I suppose that it's really important that we do keep creating our things, and that we don't try and tear them all down in the end. So the second one is also related to kids. 3-year-olds have a sophisticated understanding of morality, and this does link in something we've looked at a few times on the podcast. Despite popular belief to the contrary, past research has suggested that even young children have a sophisticated moral understanding. They're also surprisingly pro-social. Toddlers tend to enjoy sharing and helping others, for instance. Now, researchers have found that children as young as 3 not only have a sense of what is right and wrong, but even soften their judgments about a transgression after being given a good prosocial excuse. So I know that we've touched on this on the podcast on quite a few different ways over the years. For example, I remember last year we looked at it in a psychology news section about how prosocial they are. And whilst children and toddlers, they definitely have a mischievous side, but they are very good by nature. And even though I'm really not fussed by developmental psychology, I find it interesting. I would just never want to research it or, to be honest, learn about it any more than I have to. I still think it's very interesting and it's very, very applicable to everyday life. But I know this does have a lot of implications for different morality models, because there was one I learned in my second year of social psychology, and it was always based on the idea that we learn morality as we get older. Well, if that's true, then these findings can't possibly happen, because if we are quite immoral when we're young, then this doesn't actually make any sense. So this does have implications for the literature, and it'd be interesting to see what new, if any, new models actually get created because of this. Because all the ones I've seen off the top of my head, they don't account for this at all. So the final one is, we believe that people who can handle pain are more formidable. In the popular imagination, the ability to withstand physical pain is often linked to particular attributes. Getting tattooed or pushing yourself out of the gym, for example, is often seen as an indicator that someone is strong-minded and determined. Okay. According to a recent study, we also see people who are insensitive to pain as more physically formidable. Participants believed that pain-insensitive men were stronger, more muscular, more aggressive, and more likely to take risks. The reverse was true too. Participants thought that people who seemed dangerous were less sensitive to pain. Okay, so this is always quite a fun one. Personally, I would never get a tattoo. I just wouldn't. And if people want to get tattoos, that's fine. But I really don't see the appeal. Appeal. But the anthropology behind tattoos is actually quite interesting. I will admit that. Pushing yourself at the gym, yep, I can understand why that would make someone seem more formidable, for example. But to be honest, I think the whole idea of formidability is very dated, but it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, because the more formidable you were, you would probably get more females, so more reproductive resources, and you would have a bigger social status back in the day. Yeah, but nowadays I'm just not sure if that holds any truth, and to be honest, should it hold truth? I think that's a debate for another day. But it does show that even though we're in modernized society, these ideas from our evolutionary past still hold a lot of truth. So by this would suggest that these are possibly innate, and they're either innate to us or they're ingrained in our culture so strongly that we don't want to get rid of them. So an interesting take on it, I know, and that probably had nothing to do with the article itself. To be honest, there's nothing else I can actually say. That was a tangent, but I think a good one. So I hope you enjoyed the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So moving on to the personal update, there's actually not a lot of psychology related stuff that I'm actually going to talk, because still waiting on a lot of stuff until we have the normal lectures. So to be honest, this is going to be a very short personal update, but definitely met a lot of good people this week. And if there is any university students listening to this, if your university does sort of have outreach ambassador programs, definitely sign up because I really, really enjoy it. I worked 2 full days this week, and the first one on Wednesday was really interesting because something that our university does is that it does like mock interviews for like people for like job interviews, degree apprenticeships, and that was really informative. Like I met some great people like because of it, but it's really interesting to see how people approach interviews when they've never done one before. And that's the good thing about this outreach work is that it allowed me to one see what definitely not to do, and like wow, some people are really bad at interviews, and two, it really makes you understand how to apply this to your own situation. So that's the little useful tidbits like this week. If your university actually has an outreach program, and of course, if you're actually at university, definitely check it out because I really enjoy mine. I'm not going to say that every outreach program is actually going to be great, but I know like my one is, and I do have a lot of fun. So, as always, I always love to your thoughts and feelings on today's episode, and you can always take a picture of where you're listening to the podcast from, because that's something that I'm starting to like notice on a few podcasts, and I think it would be brilliant to see like where you all listen from in all of your own countries. So you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi Bartley. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwiley.net/podcast, or you can always email me, connorwiley@connorwiley.net. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by personality psychology and individual differences. So the thing that makes this a great sponsor for today's episode is because your personality and your personality traits actually have a massive impact on on whether you cyberstalk or not. So that's what makes this really interesting and very, very applicable for today's episode. So even though in like today's one we're going to be talking about how personality applies to cyberstalking more specifically, this book actually goes into like a lot more depth about the other aspects of like personality. You know, for example, like what actually is a personality, what are the different models, what are the different personality traits, how a personality impacts people's politics, religions, attitudes towards like vegans, like vegetarians, and so many more great topics that I absolutely love. Personality psychology is a topic that I thought I would hate from the beginning, but it's really quite fascinating, and it's actually one of my favourite topics. I think it's probably third in my like favourite topics that psychology has to offer. So I would definitely check it out. And like all of my books, they're all written in a great, engaging, and a conversational tone that makes it really easy to understand. So that's personality psychology and individual differences. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can buy the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And you can also buy the book directly from me at payhip.com/Con And buying it directly from me just helps to support me more as the author because I get a larger chunk of the money compared to a large online retailer. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about why do people cyberstalk others, and this is a great podcast episode that I really enjoyed. So let's dive into it. Introduction to cyberstalking. One of the things that makes this issue so interesting is that everyone throws the word about it like it's nothing. For example, I regularly hear people say, that they stalk celebrities online, they check in on their social media accounts once, twice, or 3 times a day. This overuse of the term cyberstalking isn't exactly helpful because all forms of stalking can be very dangerous in the right circumstances, but it is understandable. I'm absolutely like no different because I do occasionally say that I stalk celebrities and a politician or two online, and yeah, I do. Although the form of a cyberstalking that is a common could be the following situation. When a man or woman, or to be honest, any intimate partner, are asleep and when the man has fallen asleep, the woman checks the man's phone if they know their password or have Face ID access. Then the woman starts reading their messages and checking up on their boyfriends. That is a form of cyberstalking that we'll actually focus on in today's episode because it is a common and it's been very well researched in a recent paper by Elita March in all 2022, since the paper gives us insight into why this happens and more. Also, I know this might not sound like a cyberstalking because at least when I imagine a cyberstalking, it involves stalking at people online, possibly hacking them and harassing the stalker's target. Therefore, I understand how, in comparison to online harassment and menacing acts online, simply checking a partner's phone might seem relatively innocent and acceptable, especially when we consider how this tends to involve checking in on a long-term partner and investigating their commitment to the relationship, or checking out a potential short-term relationship to get information like their sexual promiscuity. Although this matches cyberstalking behaviors in a sense, because one of the aims of a cyberstalking is to retain or gain a partner, as well as knowing a relationship commitment and sexual promiscuity definitely helps achieve that aim. Furthermore, it's perfectly possible that a person's motivation to monitor their partner online is related to their personality, since the study we'll look at in a moment does find cyberstalking implications for the dark trifecta. These are the personality traits of narcissism, psychopathy, sadism, and Machiavellianism. I still love saying that word, it's really cool to say. March and 2022. The main study we'll look at in this episode was done by March and her peers because they aim to investigate the different methods people use to monitor or cyberstalk their intimate partner and what techniques we use to get this information. These methods were gathered from long-term and short-term partners, data about their personality as defined in the dark trifecta classification were collected, and mating goals, whether the person wanted to gain or retain a partner. All that data was collected. Moreover, the study measured a cyberstalking with 21 items, asking participants to rate whether or not they would engage in each type of behavior by responding to yes or no questions in 4 different contexts: long-term or short-term relationships, and was pursuing the goal of either gaining or retaining a mate. In other words, the participant had to think about how they would behave in each of these life circumstances. For example, how would they engage in these techniques if they were in a short-term relationship compared to long-term. Then a fact analysis was run to classify the cyberstalking behaviors into 3 different types of cyberstalking. The researchers labeled these as duplicitous. This involved behaviors like using the location setting on a partner's phone to see where they've been. And personally, I think that's just creeping flat out wrong. I mean, like, why would you use why would you use those settings? Yeah, like, that's seriously duplicitous. The second classification was invasive. For example, partners would use invasive behaviors to get information from their partner, like checking the partner's messages and phone history. And finally, there was passive cyberstalking behaviour, in that they've been checking the online status of a partner. Now, in my opinion, I think whenever we casually throw around the word cyberstalking, I definitely think it's the passive form of cyberstalking. That's what we're actually talking about, because you can't really get more passive than just scrolling through our favourite person's social media account and maybe we like or maybe we comment on stuff. You can't really get much more passive than that. What were the results of Marginal 2022? Findings of these studies show that thankfully both men and women were more likely to passively cyberstalk their partner compared to using invasive or duplicitous methods. This makes more sense because most people would just want to see what their partner is up to on the line. And whilst I suppose that there is an argument that duplicitous methods of cyberstalking, like using the location app to monitor your partner's movements, might be more beneficial, since this allows you to get higher quality information. This is probably outside a lot of people's comfort zones, because I'm fairly sure that it's illegal. If not, it probably should be. Interestingly, the results show that women cyberstalk a lot more than men do, due to women are more likely to use invasive and passive forms of cyberstalking than men, as well as women engage in more invasive cyberstalking to retain a long-term partner, and they use invasive cyberstalking to gain a short-term partner too. And I think those results are really interesting, especially as whenever I think about cyberstalking, I always imagine men doing it. And a lot of media and other representations of cyberstalking show that it's a male dominated task. Yet one possible explanation for why women are cyberstalked more can be found in Trevor's 1972, because he argued that from an evolutionary perspective it makes sense, since if women make a mistake in choosing their sexual partner, then this is potentially more costly for women than men, due to women have to invest more in their parenting compared to men, and domestic violence happens more to women than men. Therefore, it is arguable that cyberstalking provides women with a low risk strategy to avoid making these errors in partner choice. Personally, I do think that this is very understandable to some extent, because I think in the UK and across the Western world, there have been a lot of high profile murders of women on the news. Also, whilst I know that I'm certainly tapping into media bias and the availability bias here, the research does show that women are more likely to get abused, assaulted, and murdered by male partners. So it would make sense that partner choice is more costly to women than men. So whilst I can understand that cyberstalking is a strategy to help women, I still have concerns about the possible ethical and possibly legal questions about this strategy. Moreover, something interesting that March and her peers did note was that it is strange that women reported using invasive cyberstalking to get a short-term partner. And this is weird because in invasive forms of cyberstalking, often we acquire greater knowledge of a partner than it would normally be available in a short-term relationship. For instance, in my mind, if I'm in a short-term relationship with a guy, then I'm hardly going to give him access to my phone, and because that makes no sense to me, so that finding is just a little strange. How cyberstalking links to personality psychology. Throughout the results of the study, the research finds that personality impacts cyberstalking because people higher in sadism, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism were related to higher levels of intimate partner cyberstalking, although when each form of cyberstalking was examined more closely, it was only psychopathy that was related to duplicitous, invasive, and passive forms of cyberstalking. As a result, Machiavellianism was associated with a passive and invasive cyberstalking, but not duplicitous. Also, sadism, Machiavellianism, and narcissism did impact invasive cyberstalking too. Conclusion. To wrap up today's episode, cyberstalking can be a very serious crime and a problem who are harassed and menaced online. And whilst March in all 2002 only looked at intimate partner cyberstalking, this is still an important area to learn about, because I'm sure there's some research out there on the possibly darker implications of cyberstalking in relationships. Or maybe that really is just for Hollywood and entertainment, but I doubt it. As you've seen in this episode, gender and personality traits play a role in cyberstalking, and this study and others do raise massive questions about cyberstalking and whether it is good or not. So actually, I'm actually going to change up the ending for today's episode, because I actually want to know your thoughts. So I'm actually going to leave you on this last question, and I would love to know what you think about this. Is it the fact that errors in a partner choice are more costly to women than men enough to justify cyberstalking? I would absolutely love to know your thoughts. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. And if you wanted to support the podcast, then if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please let them know about it and please share it. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. Definitely check out Personality Psychology and Individual Differences, available in all the usual places. And you can also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ConWhiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.